ArtPrize is back. With more than 1,500 entries, who's standing out this year? Tonight, we have your cheat sheet. The must-see entries making the critics' cut. Who's cashing in this year? From 24-Hour News 8, this is the ArtPrize Jurors Awards Shortlist. Live from the ArtPrize Hub in downtown Grand Rapids.
Good evening, everyone. The votes are rolling in for ArtPrize 7, and tonight we are showing you some of the best and unveiling which artists have a chance of winning that $200,000 Grand Juried Award. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Emily Leonard.
And I'm Casey Jones. Today is really the first step in narrowing down to figuring out who will be the big winners of ArtPrize this year. And Wood TV8 is carrying all those milestone moments. You can catch them all right here on Wood TV8 throughout the duration of ArtPrize.
There are two parts to the ArtPrize competition, the public's and the jurors' picks. Tonight we're showing you the jurors' favorites. Then on Sunday, we will find out what pieces will make the public final 20. Next week, we will be bringing you live shows every weeknight, discussing the finalists and bringing you live concerts, ending with the main event, the ArtPrize Awards.
And tonight you'll hear from an all-star panel of jurors that ArtPrize has brought in from all over the country. Each juror is responsible for 5 different categories: 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, time-based, installation, and most outstanding venue. The winner of each category will win $12,500, plus one of the pieces announced here tonight will win the $200,000 Grand Juried Award.
So let's get straight to those shortlists. We'll start with the 2-dimensional category. Last year, the jurors chose The Haircraft Project by Sonia Clark as the winner. The juror picking the 2-dimensional winner this year is Justine Ludwig. She's the director of the exhibitions and senior curator at Dallas Contemporary. Thanks for joining us, Justine.
Thank you for having me here.
Let's start with your first piece. It's called Gangrene by John Haverty. It's at Boardwalk Condominiums. This is a big piece.
It's huge. It's this amazing illustration that takes images from the media and also images from fantasy, complete imagination, and melds them together. So you have these mergings of very different narratives that come together simultaneously. And I was really taken by looking at different individuals exploring the work and making their own stories in the piece. And despite the fact that it was a narrow hallway and not at the optimum manner of viewing it, it still sung. It still was unbelievable, and I was quite taken by that.
I think it's interesting how you do. You listen to the people viewing it, and you listen to what they were saying and the different stories they were making up about it, what it could be to them.
Yeah, it was fascinating because some people really saw the media images and were able to create these clear narratives that were based on reality, and other people saw pure fantasy, and that was quite fascinating.
Awesome. Very Young Village in Seoul by Soo-Yeon Kim at the Grand Rapids Community College Collins Art Gallery on Bostwick Northeast.
Yes, it's a suite of photographs that look at individual homes within this shanty town, and it really brings attention to the different materials that were used to make these homes and the personality of the individuals that made them. There's absolutely beautiful composition within each photograph and amazing juxtapositions of different materials, and there's also often these moments where you see a double image. They have an actual billboard that has a photograph on it that was used as part of the house, and then it's the image of the house itself. So reading it, you see these different narratives simultaneously.
Very cool. Now, A Fearless Brother Project presents Realistic Neglect, so we want to just let everyone know that some of these images may be a little bit more than you want to see right now, so we're just going to show them quickly. This is by Monroe O'Brien from the Grand Rapids Art Museum. It's a very graphic entry based off murders that happened here in Grand Rapids during 2012 and 2013. Monroe O'Brien is local here from West Michigan, from Kentwood.
Yeah, there were these unbelievable collaborators that took on different roles within these photographs, and so these very traumatic moments became real and about individuals rather than being about news headlines, which was something that was really quite moving and something that stuck with me long after I saw the images. They haunted me because I'm so used to seeing images repeated in the media over and over again to the point that they cease to be human, but these were so personal, so human. They were gorgeous and traumatic at the same time.
In talking to you guys ahead of time during our newscast, we kind of talked about the things that you see and then that you think about the next day. It sounds like this is one of those pieces for you.
Yeah, all the pieces on this list are things that sort of stuck with me and came back over and over again. This is a series that kept me up at night, literally.
Okay. Moving on, Fireside Chats by Britt Spencer at Craft House.
Yes, it's a series of paintings that have this very unique visual language that is established by the artist that merge nostalgia with these fantasy narratives together. There's a great sense of whimsy in them. They're funny, but there's also something quite off-putting or tragic in many of the images as well. So you're feeling both of those emotions simultaneously.
So it's almost like something that I could see children drawn to this.
Yes,
Will
exactly.
they understand the real meaning of it, or will they just see, I mean, is this a way maybe to get kids interested in art? Whatever way we can get them in.
Perhaps the real meaning behind the work is established by the viewer themselves.
Right.
So I think that's an interesting thing as well.
Very bright. Okay. Fragile Environments by Diana Wegge at First Park Congregational. It's 2 large panoramic paintings. Tell us about this one.
So one of the works is on the interior of the venue, and the other is on the exterior. They are paintings modeled after the Hudson River series of works, and one is very well taken care of. It's been seen in its pristine form, and the other is on the exterior of the building, so it's been vandalized. It was placed in New York City for one day, and an individual graffitied upon it. And something that you see when you look at the work that's on the inside is that the artist has actually depicted some of the graffiti that's actually at Niagara Falls. So there's a relationship between natural beauty and people disregarding that, but also artistic beauty and people disregarding that as well.
Okay. So I would like to ask the other jurors, did you see any of these pieces? Did any of these other pieces speak to you? Any other comments about the pieces that we've just talked about?
I saw the photograph, the Korean photographer, and it is amazing to see the textures and the way that humanity has sort of invaded this post-industrial landscape. I think when we think about Korea, you think about this hyper-technological society, and to see the sort of the struggles and the things that don't appear in the headlines, to see that so graphic and to see it so kind of powerfully rendered definitely resonated for me as well.
And also that piece is photos on the village that's the biggest shanty town in Seoul, South Korea's wealthiest district, and one of the districts there. So really the juxtaposition of the two right there with those pictures.
I think when a lot of people think of an art prize, an art competition, you think two-dimensional art. How difficult is that? There is so much two-dimensional art out there to pick these final 5.
Yes, and there was an unbelievable range, and there are many works that I was quite taken by and found very, very impressive that I couldn't include on the list, and that was something that I spent a lot of time mulling over. It's also very hard to compare these works that are so diverse with one another.
Too bad it can't be the jurors' long list. We can make the list a little bit longer.
All right, let's move on now. We have our first 5 in the books. Let's move on to the 3D category, which is brought to you by Hayworth, including things like sculptures and installations. Now, last year's winner was Tango Hombre, which was on display at Kendall College. The juror for this category this year is Sarah Urist-Green. She's the creator and host of the Art Assignment from Indianapolis, Indiana. Thank you so much, Sarah,
Thanks
for joining
having
us
me.
today.
Glad to be here.
All right, My Mises is by Kunhiro Akinaga. It's out at Frederick Meyer Gardens, and Kunhiro is from Japan. Now, 300 artists applied to be shown at Meyer Gardens. He was one of just 25 selected to be there, so this art very impressive.
Yeah, well, there's a very long tradition of Japanese ceramics, and it's very clear when looking at this work that this artist is very skillful and knows the craft. But I think what made this piece in particular stand out for me is that it's very much in conversation with the world of contemporary art, and it's not only speaking to this tradition, it's sort of bringing this tradition into the present day. And it was also, you know, when you see it, you're almost used to seeing a specimen, a skeletal specimen in a display case in a natural history museum. But this one kind of gives you clues right away that it's not real. The title is mimesis, but it is not an exact imitation of something. You can see when you're looking at the joints that they're very unusual and decorative. And for me, it really made me think about how strange it is that we as people put these specimens or art into cases and sort of marvel at them in this context.
Okay. And the next is Uplift by Jared Beck. That's down at the Calder Plaza. And this was created from layers of discarded conveyor belts.
Yeah, so what I especially appreciated about this sculpture is actually, you can't see it right now, but the way that it's sited in front of the cauldre, if you view it a little bit from a different angle than it is now, the cauldre, which is such a strong and dominant piece and so much a part of this city, this is kind of blocking it in a really interesting way. And if you view it from Ottawa Street, looking the other way, it's almost a wall in front of it. And I feel that it's very hard for an artist to make something that competes in that plaza. And that, for me, it was a direct conversation with the cauldre. Like the undulating forms of the mats were definitely sort of mimicking and talking to the cauldre.
So for you, this was more about the size than the materials used?
Well, it was more of the site and being very conscientious that any sculpture talks to what's around it.
All right. And The Last Supper, this is a very powerful piece. It's by Julie Green at Kendall College of Art Design. This is paintings of death row inmates' last meal requests, and there's actually those plates that they ate those final meals with.
Well, so the artist has taken sort of thrift store plates and then painted on them a representation of what was recorded as the inmate's last meal request. It's extremely powerful, and for me, the power of this installation rests on how humanizing it is to see what a person requested during their last hours of life. Sometimes it was a pack of Jolly Ranchers or a more elaborate meal. One person requested a birthday cake because they'd never had one before. This one was just gutting for me, but I really respected the artist's restraint. They didn't include the name of the inmate, which I thought was really smart. And we all read statistics in the news, and they're not real. And for me, this put me there with that person.
Now, are you engaging in this art as you sit there with other ArtPrize goers, talking about this art to them?
I wouldn't ask them, but I'd listen. I always like to eavesdrop and to see what's going on. And that one, it was very clear as soon as anyone walked into that room, they were sucked in and spent a long time there.
What were some of those conversations that people were having at the Last Supper?
I think a lot of it was pointing out particular ones that stood out to them. I mean, it's a lot of everyday things that they'd see on there. And I saw people just kind of hushed more, pointing out particular ones. But I think a lot of people were moved in that space.
All right, then. Our fourth on the list is Relic. This is by Tamara Kostanovsky. It's at the UICA, and Tamara says, Relic draws attention to our alienation from the natural environment, reminding us of our almost forgotten role as primal predators. Is that what you saw in this Relic?
I was most immediately attracted to this because of, first, the masterful use of materials. You see these sides of beef, or so you think, hanging from meat hooks. And it's actually fabric, that it's often her clothes or clothes that she's had donated from friends and family. So first I was impressed just with the skill of being able to transform fabric into meat. But then, you know, for her, she is originally from Argentina, or I think she was born in Israel, but grew up in Argentina, and she references with these pieces the history of violence in Argentina. But for me, they can be read in a very different way. I walked in and kind of laughed at the idea of sort of art meat and how you walk into a cold gallery and you evaluate these specimens, and especially in the context of ArtPrize, where you're kind of sizing up these things for our consumption.
You can leave there with a very full feeling. All right. Our final here in the 3D category is, and bear with me, Anishna Bensag Bimska Web Shakigawag.
Yes.
And thank you. It's also called Native Kids Ride Bikes. It's by Dylan Miner. It's down at the Grand Rapids Art Museum. It's a series of decorated bikes. You might notice the piece, maybe the name sticks out more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I think there's a very compelling story about the collaboration that brought these lowrider bikes into being. The artist worked with Native youth and Aboriginal artists in Canada. And so what I think is fascinating is that exchange between cultures that was happening. Young people who weren't necessarily acquainted with the own cultural traditions. But I think we often think of Native culture as being something in the past. And for me, when I look at these, they're so new, they're bright and shiny and hip and fantastic and really enjoyable, and they're firmly rooted in the present. So that's something that I particularly enjoyed about this one.
Okay, and we have some time to bring in the jurors as well. Real quickly, anything about these 5 here in the 3D category that really captured your attention?
I love the meat.
Yeah, very Lady Gaga.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, she was really strategic about like what fabrics to translate into, what parts of the meat. It was very visceral and kind of transformative. It's really, and the birds too. I mean, the birds seemed to be maybe a different part of the work, but they spoke to one another very well. The birds were vultures.
We've only gone through 2 jurors, but who has the hardest job on this stage? You guys think?
A lot of venues, a lot of
Yeah.
I don't think anything.
I think Justine did.
Just because the pure amount of 2D?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had a lot.
There's such a range of different types of work that you're looking at in 2D that I think it is quite challenging.
And we talk about how you do use assistants and teams to go out and span the whole ArtPrize landscape so that people can bring you ideas, and you have to see this and you have to see this. So that's important to point out as well.
Yeah, I'd like to give a big shout out to the assistant jurors.
Yes.
Like, go AJ and go everybody, because they were invaluable for giving us context, orientation, information. They really helped us find a foundation to then allow us to find our opinions and information. And so I can't speak highly enough about them.
It takes a village.
All right, well, we are just getting started.
That's right. We have 3 more shortlists to unveil coming right up. Time-based performance art, installation, and the most outstanding venue are still all ahead, live on Wood TV 8. Welcome back to the short list. Here is a live look at our ArtPrize studio at the Grand Rapids Art Museum. We are broadcasting all of our newscasts live from the Graham, from the center of ArtPrize for the next 2 weeks. And we hope that you'll come down and see us because we are having a great time there.
Yes, we are. Right now, we want to welcome you back into the ArtPrize Hub. I'm Casey Jones alongside Emily Leonard. You can catch us every morning, Monday through Friday, 4:30 to 7 o'clock.
Oh,
on
don't make it
Daybreak.
earlier.
I know. Tomorrow's going to come early enough.
Yes. Well, tonight we are talking to art experts about ArtPrize. They are the jurors. Let's move on to our next shortlist, time-based. These are works like performance or film. The 2014 juror pick was the modern dance collective dance in Annex's Respirator. This year's juror is Shari Freelo, the curator of New Frontier at Sundance. Welcome. Thank you for joining us, Shari.
It's great to be here.
Well, time-based. For the Toward by Boomerang Dance and Performance Group, this is at SiteLab. A lot of talk about SiteLab, too. Go ahead. What do you like about this one?
Well, this one, I saw a lot of performance, and this one really stood out in its intensity.
Okay.
And it's very focused as well. I mean, the work is about kind of negotiating the unbearable baggage of an intimate relationship. It's abstract, but it's very legible, really accessible, and palpable. The energy between the 2 performers and the materials, which was nails and big discs of steel. You really felt the energy from one moment to the next. It was relentless and very magnetic.
I feel like this is one category where the public ArtPrize voters and the jurors kind of separate a bit, because it's not something that the public can always identify. They're not always sure what's going on or what to look at or how to take it. Do you have any advice for the public as they go out and enjoy ArtPrize but want to learn more about what they're seeing?
Well, you don't have to know about art to enjoy it. Because what the artistic engagement is watching yourself respond to a piece of art. Perhaps you don't know all about performance or all about painting, but you certainly have your own responses to it, and those are always valid. And that's really what the art is trying to do, is to crack open a kind of response and a dialogue, and help you think about your world and your surroundings in a different way. And that's the purpose of art.
Very nice. Well, T-Rex by Drea Cooper and Zach Canapari, ArtPrize on screen, presented by the Waterfront Film Festival, which is teaming up with ArtPrize this year.
That's right. It's this piece is a remarkable documentary about a teenage woman. I think her name is Clarice, who wanted to be a boxer, and she was in an all-male gym, and the coach was saw champion potential. And the film follows her from those very beginnings to her bid for the first, a spot on the U.S. Olympic team. It was the first women's boxing Olympic team that happened. And it's just a beautifully told story, really wonderfully lensed. It's a kind of portraiture and documentary that I always look for when I'm putting together the festival, that has a kind of density in the storytelling. It's not only verite, but some really beautifully stylized shots. And the character is just amazing. She's an amazing woman.
Cool.
This is real life. Is that another aspect to this?
It's documentary. I mean, I looked at all the documentaries, the features, and the shorts, and it's apples and oranges. But my category is apples and oranges. What I really look for is that sort of density of layers, the density of form and expression. And this film was really the one that stood out.
Higher Ground by Kate Gilmore, again at Site Lab, the Rumsey Street Project.
Well, this is a fascinating piece. This is like an installation that's also a performance. What she basically does is she takes a building that used to be a nunnery, and she paints it taffy pink, and inside is like a kind of XXX red light district inside, and she's got these women of all ages, all dressed in, very similarly, swinging. And each time they swing, their feet penetrate the periphery of the house. So when you see it from afar, there's something kind of magnetic and haunting about this piece. And when you walk toward it, you start to feel the energy of these women swinging. It's it's very simple, but the visual language is super muscular, and I could see the people around me responding to this work very powerfully.
Now, I'm interested because this is at Site Lab, the Rumsey Street Project. It's the second on this list from that venue. Does that have something to do with maybe the interaction of this piece, the Higher Ground, that it is this whole neighborhood that you feel a part of this art?
Well, that's a good question. I went back to it twice, the Site Lab. And the first night was the opening night party, so there's a lot of energy. And the second night I came, wasn't night, it was during the day. So the energy was calmer. But the fact that there's several works in community over I don't know, it's like an acre of land or something, I think did lend to a certain energy and a willingness to respond to the work and talk about it. But this is what I love about ArtPrize. What I'm finding is all the streets are animated with the show, and you can see it in people's faces that they're full of openness and wanting and wonder to what's going to happen around the corner. What am I going to vote for? And people are talking to each other that they almost seem to surprise each other of the openness and the kinds of conversations that they're willing to have.
Great atmosphere. It is. Whisper by Emily Kennerk at 250 Monroe.
Yes. Now this is a really interesting piece. This is about materializing sound. The time-based work is not only in the sound, the temporal quality of sound, but what sound does to the table. Basically what this piece is there's a mic that invites you to come and speak into it. And right in front of you is a very long, elaborately set table. And the mic is like a hefty mic, so you're talking into it, nothing really happens. But when you whisper, the table rumbles with the sound of your whisper. The lower your whisper is, the bigger the boom on the table. And this is just a wonderfully layered work. The meaning is very layered, just in terms of if you talk really loud, that doesn't necessarily mean you're saying something powerful. I mean, the whisper, the quiet words, the words that maybe even you speak to yourself, can be as powerful as the ones that you transmit to other people. And so, and also that formally, it's very elegant. It's technologically very elegant, very simple. and surprising. It surprised me.
Yeah. That was then by Prince Thomas at Kendall College of Art and Design.
This is another really simple piece, very elegant. This is a film, single-channel installation of a firework show, and that's what you see. And what you hear is the broadcast, the CNN broadcast, and it's really sort of a groundbreaking broadcast for CNN of the first Gulf War and the big bombing campaign that happened. And the filmmaker, Prince Thomas, does a very subtle sleight of hand in shading the quality of light so that in the beginning it looks like the bombing, and then you realize you're looking at a firework. And what struck me about this is the narrativization of war and what it had to say to that. You know, how fireworks are in our culture and how we really celebrate them, and they're actually awe-inspiring. They're very beautiful. I love them, but they do intend to celebrate Independence Day and that battle that happened, and that's a story that we tell ourselves. You know what that battle meant. Gulf War was a very different war, and the way that is told is different. And I think that's really significant in terms of just our culture worldwide, and particularly in America, how we think about war and what narrativizing war really means, and how does it build a relationship between us and warfare.
Excellent. Well, there's our top 5 for time-based.
3 down. We have 2 categories to go. Let's move on to our 4th of the short list, and that is installation art. This category involves entries that are dependent on the location where they're installed. Installation is different from 3D in that changing the location of the piece would dramatically change the work. The 2014 winner was Symptomatic Constant and was on display at Site Lab. And this category's juror is Robin Symbolest, an editor and art critic from New York City. Thank you so much for being here, Robin.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and the first one on your list is the sculptural painting, and that's by Giovanni Luna at Spiral.
I just love this piece because it's about something that everyone would throw out. It uses the paint skins that are at the top of cans, and he crowdsourced them. He got people to give him all of these things that would normally be thrown out, and then using a kind of instinctive act, he rolled them, and then he made them into this kind of magical city. They're just lined up on shelves in there, so you can see it from afar as the city, but then each one is full of all of these colors, so each one is a world unto itself.
Is this a piece that takes a little bit of discovering? When you see it at first, there's that initial jarring until you realize what it is?
It does take a while to realize what it is. I mean, you kind of have to read the label to know what it is. I mean, I guess you could look and say, is that paint? What kind of paint is that? It's house paint? What?
And we all have cans of paint at our house, so this is maybe something not all of us could do, but at least give our own resources to make this piece of artwork.
Exactly.
The second on your list is Something Old, Something New. It's by Lisa Williamson. It's at Monroe Community Church. What was it about this piece that you enjoyed so much?
Well, the funny thing about this piece, if you say what the materials are, which is pig intestines and her wedding dress and some baby blankets, you would think, ugh. But she weaves it into this kind of magical structure. The piece is about finding composure amidst chaos, and it's kind of, the weaving is actually so precise. It's like it has qualities of like a spider web, and then you see it going. It drapes all the way down from the ceiling. I thought it was magnificent.
Is there deeper meaning in this for you in interpreting it, or is it just the piece itself and how it looks visually?
Well, obviously the artist put personal meaning in by putting in her own wedding dress, so I think it does, between the wedding dress and the baby blankets, I think it does speak to women's lives, and kind of sometimes chaos spins all around you, like you're Dorothy in the tornado, but somehow you have to find your place within that to stay composed, as she puts it.
All right. The third on your list is Constructing on Deconstructing. It's by Carolina Bora and Amy Toscani. It's at 250 Monroe. A very bright piece here.
Yes, when you walk into this room, it's spectacular. It's a field, you can't quite see it in the images that are showing, but it's a field of dangling piñatas of all different shapes and colors. It's just mesmerizing. So they're riffing on cultural tradition, but they've made it their own. And then part of the fun of it is that the audience can come at certain times and smash the piñatas and get a prize, either expected or less expected. So that's the deconstructing part of the piece.
Now, were you able to deconstruct any of these pieces?
I wasn't there at the right time because I had so much art to see.
Sure. Were you there while others were able to deconstruct?
I was not.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll move on to the fourth on the list, which is In Our Element by Ruben Ubera at Front Avenue, which is right under US 131.
This piece is so epic. I mean, talk about installation. Try doing a mural in an underpass with 11 arches. And he painted it taking into account the light of the tunnel, the light of the cars, the arches. So what you see, first you notice these giant, gorgeous goldfish, and inside the goldfish, there's all these landscapes, but then the rest of it is a history of street art, starting all the way back in Egypt with the hieroglyphics and going all the way through to graffiti art. And you can see it from a car and have your mind blown, or you can go to the underpass and look at all of the incredible details he put in there.
So like you said, this really sums up installation, not only where you see it in your car on the street, but also the time of day. Does this art kind of change with what you can see?
It does change at night with the lights. A lot of the art that we've seen outside changes for the nighttime.
And finally, the fifth on this list is Stripes for St. Joseph by Nick Klein. This is at Site Lab, the Rumsey Street project as well.
So this was an interesting piece. This is a deconsecrated church. It was owned by various communities, Dutch, Italian, Hispanic, and he was thinking a lot about the national conversation of race and church. What's a black church? What's a white church? So on the outside, he made it a black and white church. He sanded part of it, and then he flipped around some of the planks, so you can't see it right now. There you go. And I actually thought this was a striped church originally. I didn't realize that that was part of the intervention. And then on the inside, he did very specific interventions to some of the elements that were there already, and he, even though it's deconsecrated, he turned it into this kind of living organism almost.
And I think we have some time to bring in the other jurors here. We see this installation, which is such a unique category here for ArtPrize. What sticks out to you guys from this top 5 list?
There are a few works, actually, that will appear in my category, and I think that installation gives you that opportunity to walk inside of the art. So often we think about art as living on walls and something that we can simply view, whereas installation allows you to surround yourself with art and really to inhabit it, to live along with it, inside of it. And so I think that's why installation can be a very provocative, very compelling, and very engaging category.
I've noticed on this list that some of the more popular places that people will head to year after year for ArtPrize are not on this list. Maybe a suggestion here to think outside the box and go to some of those outlying places so you can get more into an installation atmosphere and learn more about art as ArtPrize continues.
I think that's something that I definitely thought a lot about as I was going around town with these choices. I think there are places that a lot of people automatically go, but there are so many wonderful venues, and I hope that with our choices, we might encourage residents of Grand Rapids to go beyond.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
We love it too.
And this, the 4 that we've been through so far, 2D, 3D installation, all of these are so different. And that just lends to what ArtPrize is all about in general, that this artwork is so different. All right. Well, up next, look ahead at how the $200,000 grand prize is going to be picked this year. And we're giving you still the short list for the most outstanding venue. That's all ahead when the short list returns live right here on With TVA.
Welcome back, everyone, to the ArtPrize Jurors Shortlist. I am Emily Linnert alongside Casey Jones.
And we have one more shortlist category to go, the most outstanding venue, live here from the ArtPrize Hub. We're going to get to that in just a moment, but first, We want to walk you through where the ArtPrize competition goes from here.
That's right. Each juror on this stage will pick the winning piece or venue for their category. The public will do the same once the top public finalists are announced next week. The top vote getter on the public side will win $200,000. On the jurors side, 3 jurors will come to Grand Rapids over the next several days and look at tonight's shortlist, then pick an overall winner.
Last year, the Grand Jury Prize was split into Intersections and the Haircraft Project, split in the big prize, winning $100,000 each. This year's Grand Prize Juror Award will be picked by 3 jurors. 2 of the jurors are artists, Wingechi Mutu from Brooklyn and Michael Rakowitz from Chicago. They will join Dan Cameron, an independent curator and the founder of Prospect New Orleans.
Tonight we are unveiling the Juried Awards shortlist. We have just one category left, the most outstanding venue. But first, joining us live now is Kevin Bice. He is the exhibitions director for ArtPrize.
Good to be here.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. Walk us through what the grand jurors will do when they arrive here to Grand Rapids.
Yeah, so they'll have a whirlwind tour of the 20 entries that we just heard about from these entries. And so they're here in about a week, and they've got a little bit of time to prepare before they get into town, and then I'll be showing them around, and they'll be taking a careful consideration of those 20 shortlisted nominees.
Now, is this strictly for them business that get to the 21st and forget about the rest of the competition, or do they have some time to enjoy the art as well?
They don't have a lot of time, so it will be a quick tour, but as evidenced, as we just heard, we're going to be visiting a whole lot of venues, everything from big ones like Kendall and Graham and UICA, all the way down to Monroe Community Church and an underpass under 131. So we're going to be running all over town.
Now explain to the audience how these jurors, these final 3 jurors, pick from the final 20 finalists. What is that list like? I mean, it's not like a bullet point, rate it 1 through 5.
Yeah, it's funny because it's, every year we compose a different group of 3 jurors, and this will be the 4th time we've done this award in some form, so it's the 4th group. And every year that we've done it previously, they have a very different dynamic. The art world ultimately is not a very big place, so even though I don't do this intentionally, it always works out that everybody knows each other at least a little bit, and that actually helps. So they sort of develop a rapport quite quickly and start to think through how they're going to assess this. And in some of the conversations I've had with these jurors as well, I think oftentimes jurors are looking for not necessarily a objective sort of rubric. There's not just like some sort of yardstick that they have like mental access to. It's more about how a work is responding to a particular moment in time, responding to ArtPrize as its own context, because this is a very unique way to show art, and then also just responding to the city.
But this isn't it's not a point system in the end to pick the winner. No. I mean, how do those 3 then get together and decide this is the winner?
It's a matter of walking around, talking and taking notes, when you're in front of the work, and then just blocking out enough time to talk over what sort of bubbled to the top for each of them, and then working to come to a consensus.
All right, and last year the jury grand prize was split in 2. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is that something that we could see again?
I don't know. I was not anticipating it, but it was a cool surprise. And even tonight, like I love these lists, but I couldn't have predicted even 10% of them, of the things that these folks picked. So there's a lot of really amazing dynamic work in ArtPrize, and it's fun to see, and it's I don't know what's going to happen.
That's the fun of it, isn't it?
All right, well, thank you. And you can only watch all of the ArtPrize awards handed out in one place. So that's right here on Wood TV 8. Our live coverage starts Friday, October 9th at 7 p.m.
Let's move to the final award category now, Most Outstanding Venue. Site Lab has taken home this award in 3 of the last 4 years. In 2013, Kendall College won. The juror for this category is Stephen Matizio, Cincinnati-based curator at the Contemporary Arts Center. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. We've already heard from you a few times, so I'm excited to get into your list. So most outstanding venue, processing fiber at 250 Monroe, that's across the street from DeBoss Place. This is a new venue this year. In fact, we just highlighted it last night on 24 Hour News 8 at 11 as a place that people are finding, even though it's brand new.
It's a great point, and I think that I found an opportunity in this category that people think about the venue as a neutral container, as something that just holds art. And I really was most drawn to the venues that became collaborators, participants, became art themselves. And I think 250 Monroe was a unique case where, you're right, you stumble upon it, it's next to some of the bigger players in Grand Rapids, but it's a very raw, unused, maybe in development office space, and it's filled with fiber, but fiber in the expanded field. I think we think about fiber as a very contained, private gesture, whereas you see fiber almost becoming this invasive species that works its way, moves its way through this space, and starts to collaborate with space, light, shadow, and architecture. And so I was very, very compelled by this relationship and dialogue that was taking form in this space.
I'm seeing a lot of heads saying, yes, you're right, very much so. You guys agree.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice to other venues that may want to work with their artists more? Is that something that can be achieved?
Definitely. I think that the more you can make things, we call it in the art world site-specific, but it's this idea of really tailoring and customizing the art to fit that space so that you're not just plopping up an object onto a wall, but you're thinking about the nature, the character of that space and of that site, and having an artist respond to that and create a dialogue. And I think that creates the most compelling experience.
Awesome. Kendall College of Art and Design won Best Venue in 2013. This is another popular one we see on the list quite often.
It's a very, very powerful show, you know, and this is, I think that the thematic underpinning is quite broad, but I was most struck by the nature of the art and how it really became a cumulative experience. And I think most of all, this show reflects upon what ArtPrize is becoming, because there's this movement become more is better. Let's keep getting more and more people to a point where you're getting to a critical mass and you're like, how much is too much? And a lot of this work deals with those politics of accumulation and how to sort through and make sense of large reams of data and population and volume. And so that's why I think I was particularly drawn and inspired by this exhibition.
Site Lab, the Rumsey Street project at 333 Rumsey Street Southwest, won Best Venue 3 of the past 4 years.
And I think you've spoken a little bit about this, Cherie's spoken a little bit about this. This is a fantastic venue. And I think that we talked about what makes it so compelling. And for me, it was, there's politics of immigration as well as politics of domesticity, about what happens and how we live in our space and how we occupy it. So when you see figures swinging through, you know, through windows, and you're seeing sort of different, there's a lot of performance that happens on this site. It's like the performers become the blood that circulates through a much larger body, and you really have to appreciate this entire constellation. And for me, it was one of the most unique ArtPrize experiences that I encountered.
Awesome. Spiral Gallery at 44 South Division.
So I love this. This is a great juxtaposition because you get a venue that is blocks wide, and then you get a venue that's quite small, and I really appreciated the intimacy of the dialogue that happens here. Robin already highlighted one of the pieces. And there's this part where the artist talks about mixing 2 colors of paint to create this new shade. And I thought that's what really happened with the 2 artists here. You have a very intimate dialogue that you feel you walk into the middle of, and they're both taking and they're understanding painting in different ways. We don't typically see it rolled up. We don't see it covering these amorphous forms, but there's a synergy that takes this dialogue beyond the sum of its parts.
Moving on to the UICA, another big venue.
And this, for me, when I saw this as a curator, I'm like, how do they program some of these spaces? Because they're very, very challenging, and yet I think that they also present a great opportunity, because you can't just show existing work in a lot of these spaces. You have to think about how are we going to commission, how are we going to speak with and hire artists to really animate these spaces. And I thought they did an incredible job. There's a piece called Symphony for Gestures, and it's these musicians playing instruments in different locations. And I thought that I really felt that the crowd moving through this space was animating in a different way and activating these installations. But very, very site-specific. They have to think about and commission. All of these works are new and very fit for this space.
Now, when you're going through these sites and these venues, are you looking at content or use of space, a combination of both? I mean, that's very difficult. You're talking over 200 venues here across Grand Rapids.
It's a great question. All my fellow jurors are looking at individual works where I had to look at the larger conversations that were happening, not only amongst the artworks on display, but again, how they were speaking to the venue itself. But it was a wonderful job, I have to say, because when it happens, you feel like you become part of that conversation. And I think when it happens, it's the most powerful kind of art experience. And so, you know, I think that's what ArtPrize is trying to do. It's trying to grow something larger, greater than the sum of its parts, something that has this wholeness to it and that we can find our way through.
You kind of also have to be careful too, because the next thing you know, you're in Robin's category. You know, you really have to stay on those venues.
There are people now that will flock to some of these venues that they see on your list. And most outstanding venue is so important because there are, like we said, over 200 venues. When you were there, did you see that there were large crowds already at these venues? Is that what brought you to these venues? Or did you go through some places where it was pretty sparse?
Sarah brought up an excellent point. I think with some of our nominations, we're trying to call attention to some spaces and places that may be overlooked, because there are very central locations that are going to get a lot of attendance. And then there are others that are a little bit off the major landmarks. And so with something like a Spiral Gallery or a Spite Lab, we want to encourage people to go explore. But then there are some great venues right in the core, like UICA and Kendall College, and those are just as worthy of attention. But you think about that, you kind of want to pinpoint a little bit of the expanse of what ArtPrize can be. And so like you say, I think kind of strategically about my nominations as well.
And in doing that, you got to see a lot of ArtPrize.
I walked through bars, restaurants, through courthouses and police departments, and it happens in New Orleans as well. The city becomes something that's on display as much as the artwork, and it becomes part of that texture, it becomes the collaborator. And so I discovered Grand Rapids. This last 2 days has been like a big blind date that has gone very, very well.
When you think about art, I think the first thing people think at the very basic is an art museum. The Graham is missing from this list. Any comment on that?
Well, Graham sort of comes up with some of the individual sort of nominations, and I think it was a very, very strong venue. Again, it's tough because you want to, all of the larger venues are doing great things already. Graham had a ton of people, just as the Meyer Sculpture Garden did. But I kind of wanted to think about what's happening at the Spiral Gallery as well, a small venue where maybe there are far few people going there, and to just spread the wealth a little bit. But there are many, many very worthy nominees or people that could have contended in this category.
Shine the light on some of those lesser known venues and hopefully make the right impression that there would be a second date.
That's why we have so many days of ArtPrize, right?
All right, well, there you have it. The short lists are out. We know the finalists for the 5 juried awards. One of these entries that you saw tonight is going to take home the grand prize of $200,000 from the juried award.
And we are not done yet. Up next is one of our favorite parts of the show. We'll talk to our jurors about what they think of Grand Rapids and ArtPrize. That's coming up. Welcome back. Now you have the short list, the best of the best, according to these art critics, the jurors. One of the pieces you saw tonight will win that $200,000 juried grand prize.
A lot of people probably hitting the doors right now, heading out. Hopefully not before this show is over, but we want to help you to be able to see it all. So right now you can head to woodtv.com. We just posted a map there showing you where all the art is that we've talked about tonight.
And you can keep voting for your favorites until 11:59 Saturday night. Then on Sunday, we'll get your short list for each category. The public final 20 will be announced in Rosa Parks Circle Sunday at 2 o'clock. We'll carry the announcement live on Wood TV 8 and woodtv.com. Then round 2 voting will open.
Then join us every night next week for the finale week on Wood TV 8. We'll have ArtPrize shows airing each night at 7 o'clock, culminating with the ArtPrize finale on Friday, October 9th, right here on Wood TV 8. And right now, probably one of our favorite parts of the night, we get to invite all 5 jurors, a little bit of a roundtable discussion here. We want to know what you think about ArtPrize, what you think about Grand Rapids, and we talking to all 5 of you. This is not only this is your first trip here to ArtPrize. First impressions.
I think it's important for this community to realize how unprecedented of an event this is. I travel around to a lot of art events around the world, and a lot of times it's just the same pack of art world insiders flying around the world. And there's tremendous buy-in of this community. And to be able to go around town and see people excited about art, and not just the same people, but an entire community, it's beautiful.
And I want to I also want to say I was so impressed by the churches, how the churches were involved and how they all had shows that kind of related to their own identities. Very impressive work.
And it was interesting how individuals would just start talking to the person standing next to them who wasn't someone that they necessarily knew. I regularly had conversations started with people I'd never seen before saying, they tell me, this is the best one. This is the one that's going
Everybody
to win.
knows.
And, that was
And you're like,
something-
I know.
Yeah, I'm like, well, a very interesting interaction that people felt so comfortable just starting up these conversations that were so passionate about the work.
And that it lasts for more than one night. You know, there are the things that are as close to this as like Northern Spark or the Nuit Blancs that are happening in Paris. But this is not just one night. It's a sustained amount of days. So, you know, how that conversation grows feels really productive and fruitful for a city culture.
What's your take on the public vote part of ArtPrize?
I think that's an integral part of it, because for me, when I think about the public vote, it's telling this community that their opinion matters. A lot of people think if they don't have a degree in art, that their opinion isn't valid. And this very clearly states that your opinion is valid. And I think that's wonderful, because you don't have to, as Shari said earlier, you don't have to know a whole lot about art to have a real reaction and a genuine opinion about it.
Yeah.
How about for the five of you? What a unique opportunity, not only to be selected as jurors for this world-renowned art competition, but to be able to talk about it for an hour on network TV. That's got to be a pretty neat experience.
I think you're immediately struck when you come here. People new to Grand Rapids and ArtPrize are immediately struck by the numbers and by the crowds. But really, when you think about it, this is 7 years in, and the numbers just keep growing larger. And I think as much of an achievement as it is to do it 1 or 2 years is to keep it going and to keep this level of enthusiasm and interest. And so I feel very fortunate to come at this point now when ArtPrize seems to be hitting its stride and just keeps to be climbing or keep growing larger. And so it's fascinating. I think the whole country is watching and seeing how are they exactly doing this.
And things have changed so much since we first started doing this jurors shortlist, because in the beginning, I think those jurors were getting the phone calls and saying, please come to ArtPrize. Come to what? So it's interesting now, year 7, to see how things have changed and hear the reaction from you.
And in the art community, ArtPrize is a well-known title, yes?
Definitely, and I think that there is that expansiveness of it is this very populist movement where it's not just a carefully curated or a highly selective model. It really opens up the nature of what can be shown and how it can be shown and who can access and who can have a voice in voting for it. So it is this much more of a democratic model than I think you see in the particular biennials and triennials and art fairs.
And maybe something that the five of you didn't know, but of the 20 finalists selected tonight, 19 of them are first-time ArtPrize entries.
That's great.
So congratulations on a successful tour of ArtPrize 7.
It's so exciting to be here. I remember when they made the announcement that I was on the jury at Sundance, my office, I had like a stream of colleagues coming through and like, oh, I heard that you're on the ArtPrize. That's so cool. And this was my introduction to ArtPrize, but everybody in my office had known about it and got really excited about it.
That's awesome to hear. We're so happy to hear that. Well, thank you so much for watching the ArtPrize shortlist on Wood TV.